Sebastian, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Klarna is, for my money, the biggest billion-dollar European tech company that we've not heard of. I certainly hadn't heard of it when you raised a lot of money at the end of last year. So for those of us that are not enlightened in the ways of frictionless payments, tell us quickly what you do and how you do it.
Sure. So Klarna is a payments company that we launched a couple of years back, and it has a pretty simple setup, actually. The reason you haven't heard about it is that we're not focusing as much on the consumers as we are focusing on the merchants.
Sure.
And what we're trying to do is really create true frictionless shopping, to actually be able to convert 100% from the time you go to checkout to the thank you page.
But
and
so you buy and you pay later, I think, from the consumer perspective.
Right, so part of it is a post-delivery payment method that you can actually pay upon delivery of your products, which especially if you're outside of the US and UK, where credit cards are not as prevalent, people have debit cards, and so they're afraid of putting this card number and then sending money to some obscure merchant and then hopefully get some product. So post-delivery is very important for a sense of safety, but also the whole frictionless of the actual buying experience. So basically being able to create that buy experiences that is like the like button. Okay. That is it. And we've done this in Sweden the longest time, where about 30% of all online sales today are through Klarna, and we're about 700 people.
700 people. And you started as just 3 of you back, when was that?
Right. So about 7 years ago, we were 3 co-founders in the middle of business school, unfortunately. I would have loved to be a programmer, but I'm not.
Okay. And so, but what gave you the idea? What was the kind of problem that you felt you had to solve?
Well, I think that actually it's been the same problem all time. When we started, we really looked at online payments, and we realized that it has never been solved. We've seen number of online payments companies trying to fix things, but still, every time I go to a checkout, it's a really hideous process. There's all these passwords that I forget and all these things. So what we've been really focusing at back already then is like, how can we simplify this? How can we make it so easy that it's just like clicking a button? And without any registration, pre-registration, or getting a wallet first or anything. Sometimes, we compare it and say that the old generation was the empty wallet, and Klarna is the full wallet that you can instantly use online, and then you pay out later.
Okay. And how much do people spend through the Klarna platform at the moment, and what's your revenue?
Sure. So last year it was about $2 billion in Europe. It's in 6 countries today: Germany, Netherlands, and the Nordics. And we are looking at expanding into more geographies in Europe this year.
Okay. Might we see you in the UK, do you think, this year? Or?
I hope so.
Okay.
I mean, this is really a space where a lot of people say, like, it's working, there are things that are working. But if you ask the merchants and you see how many people actually drop out in the checkout process and never finalize their purchase, you realize that something is still broken. And I hear the same coming from UK merchants as we hear in the rest of Europe. So I definitely think that there's still a potential for fixing that problem.
Okay. And, I mean, you compete with lots of different kinds of companies in all sorts of ways, from Visa credit cards and banks and PayPal and Apple and lots of big, hairy, scary companies. How do you do that, and how do you differentiate? Do you worry about PayPal coming for you, or do you just try and ignore it?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, this payment space has really become so swamped with companies. If you look at the last couple of years. But I think what's really relevant is that if you look at the payment space usually, what you would have is like you would have a merchant, or sorry, a customer that would have a card that's issued by a bank, and then you would have some scoring agency, you will have maybe a wallet, you have Visa, you will have a gateway that is connected to the merchant, you will have somebody do your fraud prevention, and then you would have an acquirer. And this whole space means that if Visa, for example, comes up with a beautiful idea called Verified by Visa that totally kills your conversion rate, then all the other guys in this space need to follow what they're doing. And it's not necessarily the best thing for the merchants and for the consumers either. So what Klarna basically does is we issue, we acquire, and we do everything in between, which means that we actually own the whole vertical stack and can control the consumer experience and the merchant experience from seller to buyer. Okay. And that is why I think that Klarna is differentiated from these companies, that most of them are actually gateways.
Okay. And So it's all on you if something goes wrong. I mean, I don't know if this is a more common concept in Nordics and Germany, but the idea that you sort of get the goods and then you pay for it. But how do you make sure that someone doesn't just run off with the stereo when they and not pay you?
Right. Well, you can compare it to a credit card, right? I mean, you buy stuff online with your credit card, and then you pay it when you get that bill later.
Right.
So this is pretty similar, actually.
Okay.
It's not that big a difference.
But so but you have to register something then at the beginning of the process?
No, you actually only use name and address to purchase. So what's key in our technology and what we've developed for a couple of years is really to be able to identify risk in an online environment in a way that I have not seen other companies do. And what it means is basically that when you go to a checkout, there's so much behavior in how you're acting and what you're saying and what you're buying that can be used to make a risk assessment. And that is much, much more powerful than the typical type of scoring data that you would acquire from a credit bureau. So, for example, to give an easy example is like if you buy 3 o'clock in the night versus 3 o'clock in the day, actually says something about your experience and whether you're going to pay or not. And there's all these type of data that you can crunch through and be able to make very, very good predicting who is going to pay and who's not going to pay.
Okay. And I think the other thing that, I mean, a lot of your investors find quite interesting, and you've got, well, just remind us, who are some of the guys that are backing you now?
Right. So
the whole laundry list, I don't know. But,
right. I'm going to buy a T-shirt. He who dies with the most investors will win. So we have Sequoia, Michael Moritz on the board. We have DST with Yuri Milner. We have General Atlantic, and also recently Niklas Sennström with Atomico.
Okay. And I think you were saying that one of the things that they found quite interesting, as well as the platform that you're building, is the data that you're able to collect about the transactions.
Right. So yeah, so that's something that once again distinguishes us from the other payments companies, and that is that on every purchase we collect SKU level data, which means that we actually know not only how much did you buy for as a typical Visa transaction, but what did you buy, what items, what quantity, and what was the price of these items. And that data, of course, on these millions of millions, I don't know how many, it's 50 million transactions or something that we did so far, on all these transactions tells a lot, once again, about behavior, and also has potential, of course, for other potential services.
Right. And so, I mean, given that you already own a huge amount of pieces in this puzzle, where do you kind of see Klarna ending up? What's the kind of end game? Do you just want to? I mean, could you be a bank? I mean, is this the sort of ultimate destination, or are you? How does it play out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wish I knew. But no, I mean, Klarna actually is partly already a bank. We have a license. We offer deposits that are governmentally insured, so we follow the same standards and regulatory stuff that all the banks does. And as is PayPal for the, PayPal also has a bank, by the way. So I think that building this type of legal infrastructure, regulatory infrastructure, is extremely important as well in order to be able to provide something that is truly unique on the market. I mean, today, just building a gateway or creating an app in the payment space is not going to move the needle. If you want to really change something in the payment space, you need to own much more of the infrastructure in order to be able to create change.
Is it a platform? I mean, do you feel like you're technologically innovating or financially innovating, which is a slightly dubious phrase these days, or I mean, it's almost a legal innovation to be able to do this, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's actually the hard thing. I think that is the challenge. I think that many, if you take a typical bank, a lot of them would be pretty good in technology and understand what they could do, potentially look at apps and everything. But then they go to their compliance department, the legal department, and the legal department says no. And then they get back with something that is totally not user-friendly. So I think that really having a legal department that understands that their role is not as much to say no, as much as to find ways in order to be able to still offer that user-friendly solution, but being compliant with the regulatory part. Right. That is really the challenge. And I think so combining these three, as you said, is really the key to success, I believe, in the payment space going on forward.
How does that slow you down, though? I mean, in terms of expanding internationally, say you wanted to launch in the UK, how long do you think that would take?
Well, actually, that's one of the great things about the EU, that we can actually passport our license throughout Europe.
Okay.
So we can launch in any European country tomorrow from that point of perspective.
Okay. I should probably open up some questions actually before I've got any more of my own. But do we have any questions from the audience? Do we have any upstairs or downstairs? No. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, there was one.
Sorry, I can't see with the light.
2 over there.
Okay. Oh yeah. Excellent. Well spotted.
Quite impressive to hear about how you guys have come along. Obviously, it was a very ambitious idea when you guys started off, and obviously, you were telling you started off in business school, 3 guys coming together, pitching this really ambitious idea. What was the initial feedback that the investors you went out to kind of gave you? Did they say it's quite blue sky, wouldn't ever happen, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, about 6-7 years ago, I was standing on a stage like this, and below me was sitting all the big CEOs of Swedish companies, and I had a Dragon's Den setup of 3 companies, us being one of them, and then I had a jury of, among others, Stefan Persson, who's the biggest shareholder of H&M and the 12th wealthiest man in the world, and I had the Royal Majesty, the King of Sweden, on the front row, and we presented the business idea, and what happened was we totally lost. We came in of these 3 business ideas, we totally lost. So in the beginning, nobody really believed in us, and we still hear that. I mean, we've heard that we are a Swedish phenomena, that we're a Nordic phenomena, and now we hear that we're a Northern Europe phenomena. So we're all happy with that. We continue to try to fly under the radar with these things.
Who were the other 2 companies?
They are not around anymore.
Right. Okay. Spotify? No. Okay.
Not Spotify.
And what did? Sorry, there was another question. Guys here. Left.
Yeah. Do you work with virtual good merchants? And if yes, how do you work with fraud checks?
It's a good question. Actually, virtual has really exploded for us. We launched a mobile solution just about a year ago. We just filed a lawsuit last week against the carriers, because the carriers are trying to block us out. They have started their own payments company in Sweden. I'm talking about Sweden now. So there's a big war going on with these things back in our biggest market. But really, when it comes to virtual, I think that there's no place where friction is as much of a problem when it comes to paying for stuff as it comes to virtual. I think that people are prepared to pay for reading an article online if it would be as simple as clicking a buy button and I wouldn't have to register. So definitely, that's why I think we have seen so much success in the virtual space in the countries that we are, just because that's a space where friction is really the problem behind why people are not paying for stuff. That is much less true if you go to travel, where people are prepared when they find a ticket to go through, you know, number of pages of registration to buy something.
Okay, and there's another question just over there.
In Europe, there's this SEPA thing, S-E-P-A, under which most financial companies and financial startups are operating, or at least the ones that do something like Klarna. What I'm wondering about is, do you have the same financial status, legally speaking, as iZettle? So if ever you want to expand into something, I mean, vertically or horizontally or anything, do you need something more, or do you have all the legal status you need? You see?
Right. So iZettle is only what's called a financial payments company, which is a very limited. We're actually what's called a credit market company, which is pretty much as a bank. We follow the same regulatory stuff. We have capital adequacy ratios that we need to hold and all these things. So actually, with that license, we can provide basically any services within the financial space.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Or? Okay, I just got one more to finish off with myself. You were saying you started as 3 guys and you're now 700 kind of people. What were your kind of learnings from that experience of growing that size, and how do you, what's your biggest challenge in kind of dealing with that?
Whoa, in 35 seconds?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that what I really tried to do is constantly be criticizing myself and trying to understand how I can evolve as quickly as the company is evolving. And that has been really a challenge since, you know, we're doubling every year. And I think it really comes back to listening and bringing the right mentors on board and then questioning yourself continuously. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, great. Sebastian, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Cheers.